Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good day and that you're looking after yourselves and one another. Here in Edmonton, it is sunny but damn cold outside. Minus 25, minus 30 with the wind chill. We had a snowstorm yesterday, so some people were ready for it, some people were not ready for it. So for me, it's a perfect time to do another video. I want to welcome you all to a Rank on the Album series on Kiss. Now, um, because Kiss have 20 studio albums, that's right, 20 studio albums, I thought that the best way to attack this ranking was to do it in four segments. So four segments, five albums each from 20 to 1. So, because of the fact that me doing an entire album ranking in one go with 20 albums, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot for me to do. And really, no one else that I talked to wanted to uh, do an album ranking with me on Kiss. Bill is basically pretty much a peripheral fan of the band, and I do believe that Ryan Gavalier is the same way. So I thought I'd tackle this on my own. But again, I'm gonna divide this into four segments of five albums each. But before I get into that, I'll just do a bit of background history on Kiss. If you've been living in a cave for the last 50 years, you know who Kiss are. Formed in the early 1970s from the ashes of a band called Wicked Lester, Gene Simmons on bass and vocals, and Paul Stanley on rhythm guitar and vocals. They formed the band Wicked Lester with another friend of Gene Simmons named Steve Cornell. Wicked Lester, basically in terms of musical direction, or all over the place musically, R&B, rock. They actually did sign a deal with Epic Records and recorded an album. That album has yet to be released because after the recording of the album, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley sat down and talked about it and decided they didn't like the direction of the album, and they basically backed out of the deal with Epic Records, thereby canceling Wicked Lester altogether. They asked Steve Cornell if he was okay if they went off on their own and started a band together without him, because I guess they felt that he didn't fit with what they wanted to do. Basically, what Gene Simmons said what he wanted to do was to start a heavy metal Beatles kind of a band. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but Steve Cornell agreed, and they set about finding other members for their band. They met up with a drummer by the name of Peter Criscola, who answered their ad uh, and basically said that he would be willing to do anything to make it. So at that point, it was a trio. So you had Peter Criscola, who at this point turned his name to Peter Chris on drums, Paul Stanley on rhythm guitar and vocals, and Gene Simmons on bass and vocals. And also, Peter Chris would sing backup vocals too on drums. They quickly met up with a guy by the name of Paul Freely through auditions. The story goes was that they were talking with a guy by the name of Bob Kulick, who fits into the story later on through way of his brother Bruce. And this guy who walked in with a red sneaker and an orange sneaker started plugged in and just started playing while they were talking to this guy, Bob Kulick. And they basically told him to wait your turn, shut the F up, and sit down. So they auditioned Paul Freely, and he got you know, got the audition and as their lead guitarist. So they settled on the name Kiss. They signed a deal with a new record company by the name of Casablanca Records, and who at the time were distributed by Warner Brothers. We won't go into that right now. They released their debut album on February the 18th, 1974, and the rest they say is history. So, what I'm going to do here for part one of this series is go through numbers 20 to 16 with my album ranking. So, coming in at number 20, is Psycho Circus. Released September 22nd, 1998 through Mercury Records, produced by Bruce Fairbairn. This album followed the highly successful reunion tour of 1996, featuring all the original members of the band. But looking back on it, is it a good album? I'll get into it. The lead-off single, Psycho Circus, good heavy song, good heavy song. But does the rest of the album follow up? Not really. Not really. Songs like We Are One is okay. The one track written by Ace Frehley, Into the Void, which is pretty good. Uh, Other songs of note are You Wanted the Best, which features all four members of the band on lead vocals. The first time, I believe, ever that's been done on a Kiss album. And the Gene Simmons track Within, which is good. But looking back on the album, like again, this album received tremendous push from Mercury Records and Polygram at the time. And it was all over the radio in terms of the return of Kiss, the original lineup. But when you read back on it now, apparently they had session musicians come in and take the place of Ace Frehley and Peter Criss on their respective instruments. Apparently, Peter Criss and Ace Frehley wanted to play on this album. But according to Peter Criss, and mostly Peter Criss, he was the one that's been most vocal about it. Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons offered him and Ace Frehley something in the amount of $85,000 each to not play on the album. And when Peter Criss said, well, what are you doing? Like, this is supposed to be like a reunion album for us to be together. You know, the fans aren't gonna go for this. Apparently, Paul Stanley said, you know what? The fans won't know, they won't care. As long as it's a Kiss product, they'll buy it. So just take the money. He refused. He refused. So they literally had other musicians playing on this album because I guess they thought that uh, Ace Frehley and Peter Criss were not up to snuff. Is it a good album? It's not memorable in the annals of their catalog. It is not memorable aside from the lead-off track. I did see them on this tour as well as I saw them on the reunion tour. It was a good show, but is this a good album overall? No, no. It did achieve gold status shortly after the release, quicker than other albums in the most recent past prior to the release, but it's not a memorable album overall. And according to Paul Stanley, it was not a good album to go out on because apparently it was going to be that this album, Psycho Circus, was going to be the end of it, and they were going to do a tour, and that was it. But obviously, it didn't turn out that way. So that's number 20. Coming in at number 19 is Sonic Boom. Released on October the 6th, 2009, sorry. Released through Kiss Records, their own imprint. At this point, Peter Criss and Ace Frehley are out of the band, so you have Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer in the Catman makeup and Space Ace makeup, respectively. Heavy album. I didn't even know this album was coming out until it was out. And there were so many different versions of this album when it did come out. There was a Walmart exclusive version. There was a Target exclusive version. You you couldn't even I couldn't even find this in my local record store, but I won't even go there. Songs of note are Modern Day Delilah, which is heavy, really good. Say Yeah, another good track. Never Enough. Okay. Is it a memorable album? It has its moments. Um, Not as good as I remember previous Kiss albums to be, but and again, doing these lists, it's very difficult to put them all together. I mean, you do them, but it's you know, even though you may like an album to a certain extent more than others, these albums have to go in a certain ranking, right? When you do these lists. So that's number 19. Coming in at number 18 is Monster, released October the 9th, 2012. The push for this album, or the hoopla for this album, the hype, was palpable. I mean, I remember reading online that yes, Kiss are coming out with a new album, and according to Paul Stanley, he was going to be producing the album. It was going to be all killer, no filler, no ballads whatsoever, wall to wall guitars, heavy drums, a balls to the wall rock album. And he said that he was producing the album, so he was going to have, I would say, majority in terms of how the album was going to sound, that he didn't have that luxury in the past, but he did have it this time. So he was going to have his say throughout the recording and the release of the album. Songs of note are Hell or Hallelujah, heavy album, heavy drums. Eric Singer is fantastic on drums. Tommy Thayer as a guitarist, amazing, amazing, just fantastic. Tommy Thayer used to be in the band Black and Blue. And of course, Eric Singer joined the band officially for the Revenge album and tour and the Carnival of Souls sessions. Just fantastic drummer. Other songs of note are Long Way Down, Wall of Sound. Again, um, is this an album where they're trying to recapture something, trying to be relevant in the rock circles? I think so. It is a good album. Apparently, there was going to be another album released after this. Gene Simmons had said they were working on a new album, but Paul Stanley quickly put those rumors to rest when he said nobody buys albums anymore, so we're not going to waste our time in recording an album only to have it um, sit on the shelves. Apparently, there were like 15 other songs that they were going to record. Monster at one point had 15 songs, and then I believe they uh, reduced it down to 12. So good, heavy album. Just, again, doing these lists is really difficult to you know, put them in the number. But just because something is at a lower number doesn't mean it's not a good album, right? So it's number 18. Coming in at number 17 is Crazy Nights. Released September 22nd, 1987. Um, this sees the band in still kind of like the glam metal, glam rock kind of phase. Produced by Ron Nevison. Um, it's an okay album. I really don't listen to it that much. With songs like, Crazy, Crazy Nights, the ballad Reason to Live. I do like the third track, single, Turn on the Night. Good hooky melody, catchy rhythm, just really good. Um, I don't know, it just seems that at this point the band were kind of floundering in terms of trying to, you know, uh, sell on what kind of music they wanted to do. So yeah, it's not one I go back to all the time. Um, but at the same time, it is a good album, right? Coming in at number 16 is Unmasked. Released May 20th, 1980. I didn't know that this album was out. We had neighbors of ours who like Kiss, brother and sister neighbor, Paula and Marco, in Toronto, and they told us, my brother and I, about this album. I'm like, no, 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 it can't be. But it's true. This album came out, and it continues in what they were doing with a Dynasty in terms of more of a pop kind of a feel. Album was produced by Vinnie Poncia, who produced Peter Criss's solo album when they did the solo albums in 1978. And he also helped produce Dynasty. This continues the rock pop sort of venture down that kind of path with songs like Shandy, which I do like. As over the years, I prefer Shandy as a track. It's a good track, melodic, catchy, just melancholy, you know. Other songs of note, I guess should say, of note on the album are She's So European, the Gene Simmons track, Talk to Me, the Ace Frehley track, Torpedo Girl, Tomorrow is another one. Um, Again, it's the band in their sort of floundering phase. They didn't know what they wanted to do. Vinnie Poncia had worked with other artists at the time, like Melissa Manchester, most notably. And um, sorry, Paul Stanley wanted to go into more of a rhythmic R&B-ish kind of a feel. So he talked to Vinnie Poncia about producing their albums, and that's what they did. They worked with him on Dynasty and Unmasked. Peter Criss does not play on the album at all, although he is listed on the album. Anton Fig played drums on the album. This was when the band were falling apart. The album Unmasked was big in Europe and in Australia. It floundered in the US. It didn't do much of anything. Again, I didn't really know this album came out until way after it come out. But yeah, that's number 16. So that's it for part one of a four-part album ranking the album series on Kiss. So please put in the comments down below what you think of these albums, what your uh, ranking albums are for Kiss, like ranking the albums, top 10, top 3, top 5, whatever you like. There are no right or wrong answers, just opinion. I know I'm going to get somewhat blasted in the comments for this, for my numbers, for my choices, but you know what? It is my choice. You can have your own choice. It doesn't make it wrong, doesn't make it right. It just is an opinion. So again, please let me know what your ranking the albums are for Kiss in terms of top 5, top 10, top 2, top 3 in the comments below. And again, click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content that I've got coming up. I will be back shortly with part 2 of ranking the albums of Kiss. Bye for now.